So there's a GOP civil war that's happening right now. Who will be the future of the Republican Party after Donald Trump? Well, the Neocons have spoken and they found their woman. Matt Lewis, noted never-Trumper, says up here, Republicans, Liz Cheney is our best hope.
Oh my God.
There's a particularly good selection here that Krystal found. Quote, like a sheriff hired to clean up an old West town, whoever saves the Republican Party will have to be tough enough to take on its most ornery outlaws before making any peace. How is Liz Cheney tough, you ask? Well, by wanting never-ending war in Afghanistan, blocking U.S. efforts in order to get our troops out of there, saying idiotic and stupid things like our national debt is actually one of our biggest national security threats. That's just a small preview of what life would be like. And if you want to see who is stepping up to defend Liz Cheney's honor after she was called out by Matt Gaetz and a few others in the Freedom Caucus, well, Jeb Bush is on the case. He says, I totally agree. Defense of Liz Cheney, which was written by editor-in-chief of the National Review, Rich Lowry, who I like, full disclosure, but this defense was quite wanting.
Yeah, Rich's argument in favor of Liz Cheney is one that I find terrifying, in which he says, what's great about her is she has deeply held views on foreign policy and doesn't hide them, even when they depart from those of the president. Her views on foreign policy are terrible. Let me just say, it is not fair to judge the daughter by the father. Right. However, in this case, she is lockstep, ideologically aligned with her dad, Dick Cheney. And, you know, it's funny with the Matt Lewis thing, too, like the quote that you read, we need a sheriff to come in who's tough, and she grew up in a tough household, and she can take it to Trump. And it's, again, this triumph of, like, theatrical qualities over policy and substance, and the fact that, this would be someone who would be, desperate to send thousands and thousands more of our working class men and women overseas to fight and die in wars that we do not need to be engaged in, which has been a complete disaster. Like, if you can't look at the past 2 decades and be like, you know what? That didn't work out so great.
Exactly.
Why would you put that person? Why would you put them on a pedestal and want them to be in charge? It's just
if you want to be the party of deficit hawkery and never-ending war, Liz Cheney is your person. You're ready to go. And that's the real issue that I have with all of this, is the trying to redefine the Republican Party in an image that it is not. Perfect example. Another thing that happened over the weekend. The Reagan Foundation reached out to the Trump campaign, the RNC. They said, stop using the former president's name to raise money. Now, the implication, though, is that Trumpism is in no way aligned with Ronald Reagan, right? They don't want to tarnish the reputation of Ronald Reagan with what Trump's presidency has been like. But really what this is a rewriting of history from the Reagan Foundation. Yes. Reagan won votes by winning over Democrats. There's a whole phrase called Reagan Democrats. White working class people, and broadly supported Ronald Reagan at the time. It's only his tax agenda at one specific part of his presidency has become the defining ideology of the GOP. They have tried to basically take one part of it, make it the only story of Ronald Reagan, and have pushed that forward. And again, also it's hypocritical because they had Donald Trump Jr. do a fundraiser for them 8 months ago. Okay, so it's like they're happy to cash their check. But now they're like, don't tie us together. No. What's happening right now is really a perfect distillation of their version of Reaganism, and it's what absolutely drives me insane.
I see it somewhat the same and somewhat differently. It's part of so many people wanting to erase all of history and pretend Donald Trump popped out of the ether, like independent of anything. Actually, there's a very direct line to draw from the Ronald Reagan administration and to Donald Trump on every level. I mean, Reagan was famous, obviously, like they've made him extremely famous for the tax cuts, which Trump has also embraced, which has been complete disaster and political catastrophe. There's also like the racialized rhetoric around demonizing, welfare queens and all of that, and the, use of the Southern strategy continuing within the Reagan administration that you can draw a direct line to Trump. There's also the union union busting, so the rhetoric that's very pro-working class that worked with white working class people, but in reality, aggressively anti-union, union busting, some of the foreign adventure, the Venezuela type actions of the Trump administration would fit very easily into the Reagan administration's like Cold War approach and foreign adventurism as well. So yeah, your way of putting it, that they're trying to rewrite history, is exactly right. So many people, Republicans and Democrats, they want to pretend like they had nothing to do with setting up this moment in American history. That is a lot more comfortable for them. That is a lot more convenient for them. And frankly, a lot of American people want to do the same because they don't want to look at their own complicity in creating the country that we have now, where 80% say that we're on the wrong track.
Yeah, that's right.
But they are, in fact, complicit with the leaders that they've selected and their lack of engagement and the various choices that we've all made. So I do see this as incredibly hypocritical, incredibly revisionist, and lacking in any sort of reflection, self-reflection, or real accurate picture of a recent American history of how we got here. You can just see
how they're clamoring. They're like frothing at the mouth to just go back to how everything was under Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
Right? That's all they want. They want Liz Cheney ascendant. They want us to think about Reagan only in one way: tax cuts and big Pentagon defense budgets, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the times are a little bit different today than they were in 1980. Crazy idea.
Yeah.
So basically copy and pasting your agenda rather than looking at why did millions of people support Reagan at the time. I think it's a very different reason than most Republicans will tell you. That is something that I just see, this completely revisionism. They want to bring it back to a party of never-ending war and of deficit hawkery. And that is something which will lead, first of all, electorally is a disaster, but morally it's an outrage too. Deficit hawkery, and imagine Liz Cheney and these other Republicans are like, we have plenty of money for war in Afghanistan.
Always.
Never-ending war in Afghanistan, making sure that all these school programs and all these things for people who don't even necessarily want them. And now they can't give money to their own American citizens.
Unbelievable.
That tells you the story.
And it's also the beginning skirmish over whether the never-Trump Republicans are going to continue colonizing the Democratic Party, or whether they're going to recolonize the Republican Party, which has a subplot about what will happen over at MSNBC, where they've embraced all of these people and how that's all going to play out in the Biden administration. So little preview of things to come here.
Absolutely.
More Rising for you after this.